What's up everybody, it's Sean here and I am back today to give you guys a review of the Air Jordan 1 High 85 in this Bred or band colorway. This marks the latest release of one of the most iconic Jordans or one of the most iconic sneakers of all time. This Bred or band colorway was one of the original colorways that dropped back in 1985. And since that original release, they've retroed many times over the years, with the latest retro happening in 2016. But with this year marking the 40th anniversary of the Air Jordan 1, Jordan Brand and Nike decided to go back to their older ways of manufacturing a ton of hype, releasing limited quantities of a hype shoe, and rolling out a super grand marketing campaign. So first of all, let's talk about the actual release. So these dropped in stores starting, I believe, on February 8th. But I know here in Toronto, the two stores that got them, Capsule and Better Gift Shop, they were allowing raffle winners to pick up both on the 8th and the 9th. And there's so many rumors, so many things being said about this release, but apparently these were only released at 23 neighborhood level sneaker boutiques, at least in North America. And in Canada, we only got 2 shops, both of which, like I just mentioned, were here in Toronto. So first off, I want to give a huge thank you over to Capsule for giving me the opportunity to pick these up. I know overseas it was a whole different story, but even beyond the 23 neighborhood stores, I saw, for example, Shoe Palace had like 3 shops that got them in California or something like that. So even like the release details of the shoe was kind of muddy and gray. So these retailed for $250 US or $330 Canadian, which is a significant increase over a standard Air Jordan 1 or even a standard Air Jordan 1 High 85. So the 85 cut of the Air Jordan 1, which you've probably seen on my channel over the past few years, it's supposed to be recrafted to look a little bit closer to the original 1985 build. However, for this Bred or band release, apparently Nike went back to the drawing board and was able to refine the build of the shoe to make it even closer to the OG build from 85. So for example, there's some slight differences like the curvature of the heel and even the shape of the midsole is a little bit different from, for example, the Georgetown Jordan 1 or the neutral natural gray Jordan 1, both of which were technically an 85 build. So for my pickup experience at Capsule, this seems to be a common theme across all the boutiques that got these, but it was at a secret location where they basically had an exhibit and gallery showcasing the history and the legacy of the Bred or Band 1. And then when they were actually presenting me with the shoe, they gave me the whole white glove treatment. So they came out actually wearing white gloves. And when they unboxed the shoe, for example, they were very careful with taking off the lid and opening up the paper, things like that. So it was a very catered and elevated experience, something we don't see with a normal Jordan release. So you can tell that Jordan Brand had a certain directive that they wanted with this release, because I saw a lot of other boutiques had a similar rollout, giving people this really elevated and premium experience. So in the case for Capsule, they had on display a pair of 1985 Bred 1s, along with a couple other retro versions before showcasing the 2025s. So first things first, here's a quick look at the packaging. So at first glance, this looks like a normal Air Jordan 1 box. However, while the lid is the same, done in that classic black and red finish, the bottom half of the box feels a lot stiffer and sturdier than a typical Jordan 1 box. So we have a lot more heavy duty cardboard here. And then you can see the label on the front where it shows off the size and the colorway, which is black, white, and varsity red. So as for the shoe itself, jumping right into the details, as we start things off with the toe box, you'll see how this is covered in a smooth varsity red colored leather. And like any other Air Jordan 1, we have these perforations all across. Surrounding the front toe cap, we have a black colored smooth leather. And one thing I noticed is that the cut of the leather is extremely thick. I'd say it's similar to past 85 Jordan 1s, but while the cut of the leather is very thick, I felt like it wasn't nearly as stiff as some of the past 85s. Moving downwards, you can see covering the eyelets, we have more of that smooth black colored leather. This also covers the mid panel underneath this, and then stitched on top of this, we have a red leather swoosh. From what I can tell at least, the leather on the swoosh is genuine, but it's significantly thinner compared to the rest of the leather used on the shoe. Covering the side wings of the shoe, we have this red colored leather once again. This is also thick cut, similar to the black leather. And then we have that classic Air Jordan Wings logo. This is pressed onto the leather and it's done in this black colored finish. And then covering the heel, we have another cut of red colored leather. And underneath this, not visible to the eye, we do have an internal heel cup, which gives you structure and support around the heel of the sneaker. Surrounding the top portion of the ankle collar area, we have more of that smooth black leather. And you'll notice how the cut of the collar, it slopes downwards a little bit compared to your typical Jordan 1. And then when you look at the heel, the shape isn't exactly straight. The top half kind of juts out a little bit backwards, which is a little bit jarring at first, but when you compare it to the look of OG 1985 Jordan 1s, you'll see how the OGs, at least from certain factories, had a similar kind of look. As far as the laces go, so these come with 2 different lace options, and they're initially laced like this. So we have a black lace and a red lace. For me though, there's no question I like the look of the black laces a lot more, so that's what I'm opting for. Underneath this, we have a very well padded, nylon covered tongue. This is all black in color, but then on the very top of the tongue, we have this tag with Nike Air branding stitched on in red. The interior of the shoe is pretty well padded. It feels quite dense and has like this memory foam feel to it. It's covered in this black colored mesh all across, and then stamped onto the medial side, we have the size, the date of manufacture, and the factory code. This stays true to the look of the OGs. And then for the insoles, these come with a multi-layered polyurethane lined insole. To give it that OG touch, it's covered in the terry cloth liner on top. We have Nike Air branding pressed onto the heel in red. And then if you look at the forefoot, you'll see how it's multi-layered. So we have that terry cloth liner, we have a layer of foam, and then polyurethane on the bottom. And then underneath this, you can see the Strobel board, which is there in place to help with torsional rigidity and midfoot support in lieu of a traditional shank plate, which is technology that came after the Air Jordan 1. So the upper of the shoe sits atop this solid rubber cupsole. This is painted in white and has this heavy texture to it. And you can see, like I mentioned, it's not a straight line all across. It dips downwards underneath the forefoot, rises up in the middle, and then dips a little bit down on the heel, which mimics the look of the originals. And then if you look at the back, you can see how the midsole on the heel, it's slanted inwards towards the bottom, meaning the portion of the midsole where it meets the upper sits a little bit wider, and then the portion that's connected to the rubber outsole is a little bit more narrow. Encased within this midsole, we do have a layer of polyurethane foam, and within that layer of foam, we do have Nike Air technology for cushioning. Turning the shoe over to the bottom, so here we have your classic Air Jordan 1 outsole, and this is entirely constructed out of a red colored rubber. We have a circular pivot point on the forefoot and Nike branding right in the center. So that breaks down the look and the construction of this pair. For those wondering about sizing, to me these fit like any other Air Jordan 1 85. So compared to a typical Air Jordan 1 Retro High OG, these are more narrow around the forefoot area, but I feel like they run a little bit longer. So I know a lot of people like to go up half a size because of the narrowness of this forefoot area, but for me, I prefer to go true to size because I don't like too much heel slippage or to have too much room in the toe box. So it's just a matter of wearing them in to break them in, and then eventually this forefoot area will soften up and accommodate the width of your feet, assuming you don't have really, really wide feet. If you do, then you'll probably be better off going up a half size. Next up, in terms of the comfort, so these feel like any other 85 Jordan 1. So like I just mentioned, it definitely requires a lot of breaking in. The upper of the shoe, the leather is so thickly cut, so it feels very stiff straight out of the box. When you're wearing these are not going to be like your typical Jordan 1 highs that usually have a very soft, very tumbled or broken in leather right out of the gate. This shoe in comparison is one of those shoes that you really have to wear a lot, and then it will form to your feet and feel a lot more comfortable over time. Underfoot though, it feels decent. We have that very well padded insole, which feels great, but generally speaking, it still feels pretty flat and firm to the ground, and it more or less feels like a normal Jordan 1 underfoot. Finally, in terms of the quality and craftsmanship, so first off, the material quality I thought was very solid. I know there's a lot of people out there that are calling the leather quality on these trash just because the cut of leather is so thick and it feels very stiff straight out of the box. However, tumbled leather or soft leather doesn't always mean that it's good quality leather. I'm not saying that the leather quality here is amazing, but based on my unprofessional opinion, and especially looking at the thickness of the cut of leather, I definitely think that the material quality is significantly elevated over a typical Jordan 1. The build of the shoe too, I thought was pretty much close to flawless. Other than some very, very minor stitch issues, the rest of the shoe I thought was excellent. You can really tell that Jordan Brand focused a lot on quality control on this pair, being that this is probably one of their biggest releases of the year. They have so much riding on the release of this pair, it makes sense why they wanted to execute this at another level. And by all accounts, I gotta say they pretty much did that. So with all of that out of the way now, let me toss these on feet, I'll lace them up and I'll show you guys how these look. All in all, there's so many things to be said about this release. I totally disagree with the fact that they made these so limited. I think it totally sucks that they have to jump through so many hoops to have such a small chance to own a pair of one of the most iconic Jordans of all time. Especially because this is the 40th year anniversary, you would think that Nike would want to flood the market, but I guess from a strategy standpoint, they'd rather have the hype and the buildup of momentum around this shoe and hopes that that momentum spreads towards other Jordan 1 releases, because we know in the past couple of years, Jordan 1s just haven't been doing so well. The next question people are probably asking is this worth the $250 US or $330 Canadian? And ultimately, I think it really isn't. I might be a bit biased because I've been heavily wearing comfortable sneakers like New Balance, Asics, Saucony, even On. So in my mind, the way I determine value for money is probably a little bit different than how I would have, say, 5 or 6 years ago. At the end of the day, this is just a Jordan 1. It looks a little bit different, but more or less it looks the same on foot. And while the material quality was a little bit elevated, and I do appreciate they were able to recraft the shoe to mimic the 1985 look a little bit closer, I just think the price increase for what we got was a little bit too much. But I totally understand what Jordan Brand was going for. They were really trying to hype this up to be more of a pinnacle premium sneaker, and that makes sense considering how the roll-up was executed. So if you're able to get these for retail, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't pass it up. I just don't think it's totally worth it. But when you compare it to how much they're going for on the secondary market, I guess it makes sense from that standpoint to grab these if you can for the already high retail price. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about this year's Bred or Band 1? For anyone watching, were you able to grab these for retail? Did you get lucky? Did you strike out and buy these on the secondary market? Or were you just turned off by this whole release and this was a pass for you? As usual, if you guys enjoyed this review, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can follow me on my social media accounts, which is listed down below. And as always, appreciate your continued love and support. Another huge shout out goes out to Capsule for giving me this opportunity. And until next time, I will catch all of you in my next review.